Sure.
Okay.
I'll show you my first pass.
All right, Ed, someone have the minutes so we can... Oh, Bruce came in. Or Mark, somebody came in. At 5:57, I will call the meeting of the Wtby Board of Education Building Committee to order. The purpose of this meeting is, those of you who were there, and I think that's everybody, we were presented with the final proposal from the architects on the facility study with their recommendations. We were given a timeline, at least a proposed timeline, where that listed benchmarks that we probably needed to meet associated with certain dates for the possibility of submitting this to the state. And there were a number of questions about the timeline and kind of what the next steps were. So I thought it was imperative to start that process. So tonight, I'm not too sure how many huge things we're going to get done for that, but I at least wanted to make sure that the entire board and the committee understood what the next steps were, what we should be doing, and kind of what the big picture of this now is and what we have to do. Thank Bruce and the boys from ONG for being here, Paul, Gary, and at this point, Paul, I'll kind of turn it over to you to kind of walk us through. I don't think you got to start from the beginning because we've seen this utilization study 16 times now, but kind of now what we need to do as a committee and a board to figure out what we're doing with this document.
Sure. Good evening. I had anticipation of the submittal of the final report. I had asked Bruce to work with me in preparing the schedule. I think we talked about that at our last committee meeting, backing up from the June timeframe, which are all familiar. If there is going to be a submittal this year for a new project, whatever form that would be, and it needs to be done by June 30th, and then to kind of back up the steps to where we are today. And he provided that memo to me, which was available, I think, at the last meeting. And he's now elaborated on that with the schedule and timeline, which shows what needs to occur, some independent and some coincidental with other items or activities. Clearly, the recommendation of the consultant is to at least proceed with planning and development of projects, new projects. One could, I guess, break that into steps, whether it be one school, two schools, or one school and a set of renovations as time moves on. But I think that really, I guess there's two key elements for the board and the committee to deal with. And one is to formally ratify a direction based on the study, either on the recommendation of the consultant or some variation thereof. Therefore, to provide staff, superintendent, and our agents to then begin to put forth what needs to be done. And obviously, both the committee and the boards review the report several times. I think has a pretty good feel for what's in there. I think it typically needs to go on record to ratify direction. And the sooner the better. If that direction is to at least proceed with submitting an application for a new building, east side, as we've been talking about for the last 5 years or 6 years, or not, then the next critical steps would be to attempt to solidify or identify over, I guess I would describe the winter months, a site. And that site, of course, would need to be able to handle either the 2-grade per classroom building or a 3-grade classroom per building, depending on, again, what the board thinks is the right direction, overall direction. And I have some ideas about that. to move us along if the committee would be interested in it. But I think that's the general context of where we are, Jason. And I think that I don't know if there's additional information that either staff or consultant needs to provide from what the report contains. It's a pretty detailed report. We've had several drafts, a lot of questions. I think they answered the questions that came out of either board meetings or automatic meetings. So with that, I can offer some further, I think, recommendations concerning those steps, but I think it's probably good to hear from the committee.
All right, well, there were a number of questions last week, so I'll open up. Does anyone have any questions for Paul, Gary, or you guys? Ryan?
I read the report. There's no alternative. It doesn't involve new construction or rehab. I think you have two main problems, even if it gets beyond the building committee, beyond the Board of Ed. One of them is now you have all of them in my district, and I can't imagine all of them in the first or the third or the fifth voting to build a new school in the fourth or the second. Their kids can't use it, their kids can't go there, but their constituents have to pay for it. So it may not even make it past the Board of Aldermen. And even if it does, and there's an issue of a referendum, I mean, we had enough signatures for a referendum when there was just one school. Now there's 2 plus 2 rehabs. So there's no doubt in my mind that you can get the signatures required for a referendum and it'll go to a vote and it won't pass. So you better come up with an option that doesn't involve construction, because it may not happen.
I think it's our job, and this is the way I'm looking at it, how...
Commissioner Brown?
I guess I would like to have us really look at what is the needs of the children in the district based on the facts and the in-depth studies that we've looked at. And I think regardless of the politics involved, and may or may not get the political will, I think as a board, it's up to us to push for what we believe is the best thing for the children. And I think the evidence that I've seen is that we really do need, at least minimum, a new school in the East End. And I do think we need to look at renovation and the cost effectiveness, but I guess I would not want to start this discussion by putting politics first. And I guess that's where I'm landing, and I would recommend, I would welcome at some point the expertise of our staff here to say what they think is the best options based on the study that they feel are our best bet at this point. But that's where I'm landing. I'm committed to a school in the East End.
Thank you, Commissioner. I had Commissioner Van Snow and then Commissioner Sweet.
Thank you. I agree with you, Commissioner Brown. I think we need to put out what we think is the right thing to do, and like we did last year, let the chips fall where they may. My question, though, is, and I think I know the answer, but I want to ask. In order to put in the 049, we must identify a site, correct?
Yes. State changed its regulations a number of years ago. Might have been because of our personnel. We had submitted 3 PK applications without a site back in 2004-05, and they did accept them, and we went through our process, and that ended up fine. But slightly thereafter, they put clear regulations requiring the site to be identified at the time of application. And there's actually, my recollection, Bruce, they even further changed it by saying they have to come and review the site at least for certain issues before we even submit.
That is correct. That is a requirement now that you have to have the State Department of Environmental Protection review the site for floodplains and environmental impact.
Did it ever even get to that point with Ferone Avenue?
It did. We did put Ferone Avenue in front of them. They reviewed it for those specific items, and it was more of a verbal exchange, phone conversation with DEP that I specifically had. The type of site that it was didn't require any further review.
So identification of site stops there, because obviously for Own Avenue, we didn't own it. We didn't, right, we hadn't purchased it, thank goodness. So identification of stops there. So if we have an 049 with some plot X of land, that's where it stops. We don't have to own it, we don't have to have a process in place to begin ownership or take ownership
No.
or any of the,
That's accurate, that's correct. You have to identify the site. You do not have to either own it or...
have things in place to go after it, whatever manner that is. Okay. So that simplifies it a little bit, right? But here we are again, right?
Yes.
Identifying the site. Now, the other side of what Brian said is Plan B. This time around, I think, especially with the information we have, we do need to have, unfortunately, multiple plans. Agreed. I think as a board, we're pretty much one of the things we, I think, came to consensus on was that we wanted to do what we wanted to do last year. But I think looking back on that, and I'm not looking to concede a new K-8. It is my hope still, but I do think we need to go through this report, which I have, and even if it's not spelled out, I think we need to use the information to make sure we have anywhere from, I think, 2 to 4 plans in place, unfortunately. Now, construction's a funny word when Commissioner McAtee said that. I think he was really referring to break ground new construction. I mean, somehow, some way, we're talking construction. We're not fitting these students into, into the places we have without something happening to our infrastructure. So I'm glad we had the report, but I still think we have a lot of work to do. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you. Mr. Smitty?
Yeah, and, this last time around, we pulled back because there was no apparent political will to pass it. Everybody was afraid of the referendum. The first time around we did this, it went to referendum. Everybody said, it's going to fail, it's never going to pass. It passed. That's our job. Our job is to go out there and sell it. I have heard multiple times, over and over again, over the last 10 years about overcrowding and Chase, the overcrowding, and Generali. Wendell Cross, very strong parent group up there that wants very much to see their school pre-K through 8, and they're willing to put themselves out here. You're going to start seeing those people come forward. And to say that, some alderman in some other district is not going to go for this, well, you better look out, because your district needs a school too. Your district needs a renovation too. And what happens when your constituents come to you and say, now it's our turn? And what happens when the East End says, you didn't go for ours, we're not helping you with yours? So you better start thinking as this city as a whole, as this district as a whole, and what's best for this whole district. And shame on us if we're not willing to sit there, get out there and fight for what these kids need. These kids need space, they need better facilities, and they need it years ago, not today. We're way beyond need. This is desperation point, and we have got to do something for these kids.
Through the chair.
Anybody else want to first crack before we go?
Yes, please.
Karen?
Just a few questions. This committee has to decide first, you said, in the direction that we're going to move. So that direction is whether or not we're going to move forward. That's
So the board does, and the board chooses to use the committee's recommendation.
So is it, so that's my question. First, it's a committee
I
recommendation,
think so.
and then moves to the board. Okay, so that's, I don't know if we're going to do that tonight, but I just thought I'd ask that. But as I recall, I think my memory's still intact with some things here. it was going to go, last time, it was going to go to a referendum, but it was stopped, I thought. And it was stopped because the mayor wanted to have a, specialist come in, consultant come in and give us recommendations. So I thought that, but it was rumored that it possibly would have failed had it gone to recommendation. That's what I'm remembering.
Talking about the referendum.
Okay, the referendum.
The one before that, Karen, when we built the three.
I'm thinking of the one that just recently. Okay, so that's where we were. I recall also, prior to even it going to that point, that I said, we need a plan B. We really need to have some other options here, and I think we went with just this one plan. So my thought is this: first of all, here we go again. We're back, deja vu. The exception is the city is, I don't know how much this consultant costs, $154,000, I can't remember, but we know the condition. We know that our kids need help in the East End. So I think we got, the kids have we've been delaying this, delaying it, and each year, we keep our kids in this situation and we delay it. So I think we better move forward with something and come up with some options this time. Because each day that this goes by, our kids are hurt because they're in overcrowded conditions. So that's what I'm going to say to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Charles?
Thank you. I think that we must determine what are we as a board called to do at this point. Are we called to use stopgap measures, convert some space, make things meet? I don't know if that's what we're called to do. Or are we called to move forward with this district and improve the lot? Not just year or 5 years when this is all done, but for generations to come. We need to build for generations to come and not just to do what we're going to do at this point. And there is history there. So about 40 years ago, some Board of Education decided that they were going to build a new Crosby, a new Wtby. They were going to build a North End Middle School, a West Side Middle School, and a Wallace Middle School. Now, they built that for the ages. That Board of Education who decided that, and it was all built in a 6-year span. They moved on. They're not the board any longer. But what they did is in place. Those buildings are there. So we have to decide if we're going to do this and move it forward, or we're going to stop using stopgap measures. We have to decide, what are we called to do? What is the job before us? Why are we elected to serve on the board? And I believe that we're elected to do what's best for the students of Wtby. So I think we need to look at that and make that decision. And if you go back even further in history, some Board of Education 80 years ago, at one point in time, 80, 90 years ago, built a whole bunch of schools at that time. And I did some research, and I see that the schools such as Generali, and when I say them, you're going to say they look the same. Generali, Hopeville, Kingsbury, Sprague, Wilson, they were all built within a span of probably 15 or 20 years. Some Board of Education decided that we better do this now. And we still are using those schools 90 years later. If we move forward and do this crazy thing, it might be crazy, but when it come right down to it, it could be done with the guidance. 90 years from now, those schools are still going to be there. As much like 40 years, Crosby and Willoughby and North End are still there now. And what would have happened if that Board of Education 40 years ago did not make that move? What would have happened? Would Crosby still be on East Main Street? Would Willoughby still be on Grove? And what would their accreditation look like? Somebody has to make a move somewhere. We just can't stay stagnant. as difficult as it is, and I know it's difficult, but we have to move forward. That's what I think about it.
Thank you. I'm not on the building committee, but, I hear a lot of good points today. But I also agree with Commissioner Sweeney and Brown and many of you that the kids need this school now. And we were elected to make tough decisions. And I have always been in favor in anything when it comes to education for our kids, the quality of education, because I would say I prefer school buildings, building new schools, than building more prisons. And so we got to think about what is the message this board wants to send to future generations, that we care about our kids' education. And it's going to be tough, and it's not going to be easy. And we don't want to make decisions haphazard. But it's only right, because our population is only going to continue to grow. I mean, statistics shows it. We're not decreasing in population. Our population is getting younger. We're living longer. And so these are realities that we need to face and decisions we need to make, whether they're comfortable or uncomfortable. And so I'm not in full favor of the entire plan. I'm interested in hearing what Paul has in terms of recommendations. But if you ask me, what are my options in terms of being an advocate for education, building more schools, or having kids being stuck like sardines, being frustrated in school, acting out because they don't have the proper space, the proper materials, the proper facilities, we're encouraging them. We're not preparing them to end up in incarceration, because that's what we have. Spaces that are tiny, cramped up, and not, healthy living. And so I look at this more from a different perspective. The politics are always going to play their part. People always like to hear their voices heard. But at the end of the day, it's about what's doing right for our students here in Wtby. That's all. Thank you.
Go back to Commissioner Brown.
Yes, I think in order for us to continue the discussion about site selection and so forth, I would be interested, and I didn't see it in the study, an expansion, and I think I had mentioned this, to look at an expansion of Rotella School to pre-K to 8th grade, Maloney School, expand the Magnet School to pre-K to 8th grade. And I didn't see it, but I'm interested in Bucks Hill pre-K to 8th grade. I had an opportunity recently to go to the annex, and it's appalling. There's 2 bathrooms for 90 staff people, and these are our most fragile little kids. It's a disgrace. So I'm interested in doing something for Bucks Hill area. And my question is, site selection for the East End. We were given some alternatives, and I think that might be one of our first discussions, to look at site in the East End for a potential new school and the size of the school. So that's where I'm landing, that we really have to look at, and the Wendell Cross, is it in the cost-benefit analysis of expanding a second floor to Bucks Hill, to Wendell Cross, and I know that the report talked about Kingsbury School. I personally feel Kingsbury School site is there's no place to expand unless we buy Joan Hartley's house. So, there's just no room there. So I've never understood why Kingsbury School is. So to me, one of the next steps I would be interested in is where people think this school might go in the East End.
Yeah, I'm not married to option A, A1, B, C, whatever, but I am concerned about looking back and going backwards. We have quite a few elementary schools online here, and it's about time we start upgrading them.
Yep.
So as I'm in favor of an East End pre-K-8, and I'm glad to see that we're looking at not being married to the 2 per grade level, perhaps we're going to think out of the box. We really need to look at our other elementary schools. We really need to make this equitable across the district.
Absolutely.
So even if it means a Kingsbury, it's impossible to do, we need to look at those options. We've got to take care of what we have. And so, as I'm in favor of a new school, I'm also in favor of some type of renovation to move forward with the plan. Because it's not fair to those students, the generations of generations that are pouring into the Washingtons, the Kingsburys. And as the superintendent of this district, I need to advocate for them as well.
Charles?
Did you call me?
Charles, yes.
Charles. Oh,
The other Charles.
I'm glad tonight we're looking at this in broad terms. We're not zeroing in on anything in particular, in broad terms. And I think that we make the points of these old schools. The schools are 90 years old. How much more do we want out of them? I know that some of them are in really good condition, but we need to talk about that. You're right. I also want to talk further about site selection in East End. Whether we go back to an original one or go back to something we talked about or go back to the last one, I don't know. I really don't care right now, except that we have to look at it. And the other thing I think that, in broad terms, that we think about and work on is purchasing of existing sites that we have around. Purchasing of existing buildings, a parochial or a PAL or something that we can use that's beneficial, that would work for us. I think we need to bring that into discussion also. Starting to, I know this was an opening tonight.
Karen?
Yes, just I want to mention that these schools, Gilmartin, Duggan, Reed, Waterbury Career Academy, and Carrington. So we built schools with more recently than what was mentioned, Charles, when you were speaking. But I also, when we consider schools, I also want to consider Wall School. What those kids are going through is just tremendous with their buildings. So I'd like to include Wall School in on that as well, converting that to an 8th grade because it was before.
Well? Right.
Of course, it's about doing what's best for the kids and doing the right thing, but to pretend that politics has no role in it, just to put blinders on and pretend politics is not going to play a role, I think is negligent in a way too. So just to proceed as if we're going to build a new school and we get to the point, well, now we're not anymore, and we don't have a plan, I think would put us in a very bad situation. So I think we need to develop an alternative plan if the funding is not approved for building a new for new construction or for rehab. We need to have a plan in place that can still solve our problems before another 2-3 years have gone by. Now the students are out in the parking lot and desks. I think while we have the time, an alternative should be developed as soon as possible, not wait.
Just real quickly, whatever alternative we choose, it's going to cost money.
Right.
Nothing is free. Whether we renovate, whether we expand, whether we build, it's going to cost money.
Right.
So, regardless how we move.
Yeah?
We had those discussions about, is there a building out there? Is there an old factory? Is there an old department store that we could use? And those things are there, but they still require a lot of renovation work. You just can't take kids, throw some desks on the floor, and throw the kids in there. It takes a lot of renovation to make a school just to meet state requirements before you could put those kids in there, just to meet local requirements before you could put those in there. There is nothing out there where we're going to throw out $50 and we're going to get a 500 student school. We're going to have a place to put 500 kids. We have an amass of over 1,000 kids in this district that are really in conditions where they should not be, where it is too overcrowded, where it is not fully functional space, where it is not fully functional educational space. We have got to address that. It is going to cost money. Are we going to go for the Taj Mahal? No, this board never has. We have been accused of it over and over again. Take a look around and find me that Taj Mahal, because I have not seen it. But we have put together some very functional, very appropriate places for children to learn. And we need to continue to do that, because that's what this district needs, and we're supposed to be here to address the district needs. So we need to start doing it. And, you know, how many plans do you want to put out there? We only have so much of a time frame in which to put forth an EDO 49. And the city is not coming up with a budget that's going to meet even halfway a renovation. We need the state dollars. We're going to have to file the EDO 49. You can't file 6 of them and then wait for them all to be approved and then say, oh, I'm only going to pick this one. Because you're going to take the state off and we're never going to get money back. We have got to have a plan. We've got to commit to something here. And you got it on the table. We spent all this money. All these people came forward and said, no, let's do a study. And don't get me wrong, they did a terrific job. But we're going to do this study, and don't worry about it, because I'm not going to pay attention to anything in it, and I'm not going to follow through on anything in it unless you tell me something I want to hear. Well, too bad. Here it is. You didn't get what you want to hear, but the realities are there. This study in particular puts the data in front of you. All the facts and figures are there. We need to do something, and we need to pick a strategy, and we better get on it soon.
Karen?
Chair, 6:30. There's an old saying in my grandmother used to say, but I can't say it because we're on TV. But, so I think we need to decide right now what we're going to do. I don't know if we need a vote, a recommendation.
We're not going to recommend anything tonight.
Okay, so when are we going to need to?
If no one else has any comment, I'll wrap it up by saying this. According to the schedule we have before us, this committee needs to make a recommendation to the full board on or about the 19th of November.
Sorry, Chair, but I believe Paul said he had a recommendation, and I don't think we heard it. And I think I would like to, you know, the work that he's put into it, to allow him the respect to share that recommendation with us.
Do you have something you wanted to recommend?
I'm going to do it quick, and it's not to the extent that we're talking about now, because I always listen to board and committees, but I guess just for some perspective, and I think the correct route is where you're heading, Jason, which is to get it before the full board, and clearly we've got some philosophical difference, make some decisions, and head off on a direction. I would say, though, that the district did a master plan in 2004-05, and if it was adhered to, everything the superintendent has just asked would be done today, now. Chose not to.
Got it.
And it keeps getting expensive.
Got it.
I and ONG put together a revised master plan for the board and the Board of Aldermen a couple of years ago. If that was adhered to, the direction at least would be underway, moving forward.
Tell
And
them
that's
what
kind of
they
going
want
on.
to hear.
And Tom mentioned that, well, no matter what's going to occur, there's going to be some construction somewhere, somehow. You know, we engaged a consultant. The consultant wasn't told to pick a particular approach. The consultant wasn't said, go tell us to go to the schools. We picked an expert who's now put together at least a recommendation and a plan. So I think the board needs to consider that where it is and to set a direction, and then from that point, depending on what that is, I've got a few more specific ideas that can get us there. But I do think, you know, based on what this discussion's about, and certain board members in certain places, it needs to act as a board and do so soon, then we can get to particular steps of it. That's all I can say.
Okay, we always give you the respect.
I would concur with that. So in wrapping up, what I'd like each one of the members of not only the committee, but the full board is, if you haven't already, go through all the potential options in the packet. If you're unsatisfied with all those, at least brainstorm, bring something to the table. There are realities here, though, that I think need to be taken into effect. I have concerns about what Alderman by district may do to this. I have actually the opposite fear of Commissioner Sweeney, that instead of everyone saying no to everyone's going to say yes to everybody's. And the city budget will become 4 times as large as it is now, paying all favors to each other. As far as site ID goes, I'm not too sure what new land grew in the past year from the East End. I would be probably okay with recycling off one of our 47 East End sites at least. I forget who brought it up, but is there any evidence in any of the new buildings that we created of improved test scores, of improved academics? I understand we want to put kids in new schools, but it might be an easier sell if we could say, Duggan School and Brooklyn School at that time where kids get in this, we have a new school, and look, it's up to 12%. I don't know if that exists, but I think it's important. Of all the options here, I have trouble spending this amount of money for another 500-kid school. If a 700-kid school is $800,000 more over 4 schools, I think that's more prudent. I got 65 other things and we're running late, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But the next steps for this committee is to, at least on your own, go through the booklet, settle on what you think is the right direction. We'll hash it out at the next building committee. From there, the building committee will make recommendations to the full board, and we'll hash it out all again there, and we'll see where we stand at the end of that. Look for a motion to
I know
adjourn.
nobody got the second sheet of the building committee, so who
Second?
has it?
Is there a second?
Oh, so you just write our names, or?
Can I have a second to adjourn the meeting? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We're about ready to start, everyone. Any commissioners wandering around, report to the table. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education. We are at the Wtby Arts Magnet School. We'll begin tonight with a silent prayer, then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, led tonight by Board of Education Commissioner Ann Sweeney. Silent prayer first, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Awad? Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Vice President Harvey?
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Here.
Commissioner McEntee?
Present.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Here.
Commissioner Sweeney?
Here.
Commissioner Jason Vanstone? Commissioner Tom Vanstone?
Present.
President Stango?
Here. I believe Commissioner Jason Vanstone is in the building somewhere.
No.
He should be coming.
We needed to depart.
Oh, he's not. He had to
needed to
leave.
depart,
Okay. So Commissioner Jason Vanstone had an engagement he had to run to, and Commissioner Awad sends her regrets for being tardy. She may be here if she gets released from where she, I shouldn't say released from something. I should say, if she gets finished from her previous engagement, or if she doesn't, then she regrets her absence. Okay. There are no communications to be read this evening, so I will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, the approval of minutes. I have minutes from May 28th of a special meeting. I have August 17th of a special meeting, August 19th of a special meeting, August 27th of a special meeting, July 30th, a special meeting, July 30th on a workshop, August 6th of a regular meeting, August 19th of a rescheduled workshop, and September 3rd of a regular meeting. That concludes the minutes that are up for approval.
Motion to approve the minutes is listed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the public address to the board.
Motion to suspend the regular order of business to hear from the public.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Before we begin, all speakers are encouraged to submit prepared written statements to the commissioners. Comments should be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. The chairman will disallow a speaker from continuing to speak if slanderous or defamatory remarks are made. There will be no responses this evening to any questions or concerns raised, but they will be referred to the administration for review and/or response. And our first speaker this evening is Danielle Albert of Kelsey Street.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I will be much more brief tonight than I have been. I would like to bring specific attention to the Daily Digest in the Wtby Republican American from Wednesday, September 23rd. This is what I can only refer to as a student police blotter of sorts. As a parent, I was truly appalled at what I read. The mentioning of specific student arrests, suspensions, descriptions of crimes, and a pregnancy showed a complete lack of respect for and violation of privacy for students and families involved. There was a specific mention of a pregnant student at Gilmartin School being taken to St. Mary's Hospital and a Hopeville student taken to Waterbury Hospital. Is this not a direct violation of HIPAA laws? From what the paper stated, this pregnant young lady was not involved in an arrest. Sadly, the speculation of who she was immediately started. Imagine middle school students texting the article to their friends. What does this do to the morale of the children involved, to the environment of the school? If this was my own daughter, I don't know what I would have done. We all know that there are significant behavioral issues in this city, but I do not understand the purpose of having that information publicized. Let me remain clear, I am not here disputing arrests or consequences for poor choices or inappropriate behaviors of students. I'm asking tonight what I have asked before. Where is the appropriate amount of social service support in our schools? Under Alliance grant money, social workers and psychologists were supposed to have been hired. If there was sufficient staff, I am sure many of these problems could have been avoided. The school year has just begun, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. Children are being allowed to disrupt testing, student assessments, and classroom teaching. Parents know what's going on in their children's classrooms, and from our perspective, these problems are not being taken care of because the behaviors continue. Students' learning is being disrupted. The need for appropriate social services should be one of the highest priorities for all of you in our schools. Our children are screaming for help. You have to take into account the well-being of the entire child. We can try every incentive and turnaround program available. If students' physical, emotional, and mental health needs are not being met, we are setting them up to fail. Our teachers and staff need support. The roles that they are being forced to take on in some cases are completely unrealistic. They're required to be the parent, the teacher, the counselor, and in some cases even the doctors. What should you do? Get staff in our classrooms who can support the teachers, do a job that is often at times beyond the realm of teaching. Begin by getting SROs or community officers in all of the buildings that have middle school students, including our 4 pre-K to 8s. Parents want to know what's being done to create and foster a positive, calm environment that will support student learning and positive engagement. You do have a responsibility to replace this police blotter that we saw and get the social service staff in place. Thank you.
Next speaker is Lisa Lassard of Pearl Lake Road.
Lisa Lassard, Pearl Lake Road. I'm here tonight in accordance to, once again, Smarter Balance. Mayor Neil O'Leary here in the city of Waterbury basically was on WATR, and he was explaining about Smarter Balance. And he actually said, you need to understand how many special educational children and English language learners we have here in the city. Well, we have 2.4% of children out of district that are special ed, which is an amount of $6 million. The rest are here in district, yes. But I don't know if you are aware of this, being Board of Education, but the supervisors of special ed, at the meetings, there's such thing called Smarter Balance Accommodations and Modifications page. And on that Smarter Balance Accommodations page, basically the supervisors of special ed can either write to the State Board of Education or phone call the Board of Education, State Board of Education, and ask them for certain accommodations and modifications for the special educational child in front of them. Let's say you have a child that's blind. Basically, the State Department of Education then would have sent a test in Braille So that child could have taken that test. Let's say you have a child that's deaf and hard of hearing. The State Department of Education would have sent a computer programming so they could have an ASL interpreter or someone that interprets on the computer. If that child's special needs also inquires other special needs, then that child could have taken the written test with an ASL interpreter or someone that speaks Pidgin Sign Language or signed English sitting right directly next to them for directions. With English language learners speaking Spanish, all they had to do was contact the State Department of Education and get the computer programming under Spanish, and the children that spoke Spanish could have taken that course, meaning that test, within their language being Spanish. So there's really no excuse here in accordance to special ed population or English language learners population. That seems to be what our mayor here in the city all the time seems to use at end of budget, the fiscal budget each and every year. Well, you need to understand we have so many special educational children within our city. It's not the special educational population or the English language population. Believe it or not, 90% of federal grants and state grants goes towards special ed children's teaching. 10% is up to the city of Waterbury. If it was just spent in the direction it was supposed to be spent, as it was intended to be spent, then the special educational department that is really doing a great job under Miss Wendy Owen would be able to do the processing that they need to do. So basically, if you can just collaborate and make sure maybe next year, so the mayor is not on WHR telling everybody the special ed population or the Spanish population being English language learners, we, the special educational population that have our children, would deeply appreciate it because it's not their fault. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jamie Dehoney of Brackenridge Drive.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Dehoney, and I live at 39 Brackenridge Drive. I'm here tonight to share my thoughts on making Wendell Cross K through 8 elementary school. Wendell Cross is an amazing school, and this is evidenced in part by their district ranking and their overall student test scores. Wendell Cross students' Smarter Balanced test scores far outperformed the district averages. Wendell Cross students saw a math achievement of 21.3%, which was well over the district achievement level of 13.3%. In literacy, Wendell Cross students saw a math achievement in literacy, the children saw a level of 47.3%. That's nearly double the district results of 26.1. Of the children who are approaching the achievement level, Wendell Cross students are at 37.3% in math versus 24.5 at the district level, and 26.7 in literacy versus the district results of 25.9. Seeing these results, it's no surprise that Wendell Cross is among the top 3 elementary schools in the city. In fact, they're only third to Rotella and Maloney, but without the funding and resources that are provided to magnet schools. In addition to providing a solid educational foundation, Wendell Cross is among the most safe and encouraging environments that I've seen for children in being involved in mentoring and different programs throughout Wtby and other towns through volunteer efforts. My son has been at Wendell Cross for 3 years, and not once has he experienced bullying, teasing, or had an unpleasant interaction. They encourage friendship, inclusion, and teach the importance of diversity to our children. As a parent, the overpopulation in our city middle schools really scares me. To go from a nurturing, safe, and controllable environment, such as Wendell Cross, to a middle school with over 1,000 students, our children are really put at a disadvantage. From 6th to 8th grade, kids really begin to take their independence to the next level. Socially, academically, and personally. They develop into young adults and begin making decisions that help form who they will become. As a parent, I really want my child that's in an environment that's most conducive to promoting and encouraging him to continue on a path of success. Despite the best efforts of the phenomenal educators in the middle schools, and several of them are personal friends of mine, we have wonderful educators throughout the school system. But despite their best efforts, they just simply cannot provide the support that our children need and deserve, and that's due in large part to the sheer volume of students. I understand that budget and funding are always a cause for concern. That being said, Waterbury has spent a significant amount of time and money on other schools in the district. In fact, the paper stated yesterday, over $300 million in the last decade, and that's, astonishing numbers. It's wonderful. We're investing in the education. We're investing in the future of the children of Waterbury, but we need to spread it out a little bit. When you look at it, it's Crosby, Duggan, Gilmartin, Carrington, Reed School, all in the last 5 or 6 years. It's time to invest in Wendell Cross. These students should not lose their momentum going from 5th grade into middle school. It's clear that the level of education provided to the students at Wendell Cross can't be challenged. It's in the numbers. Why not invest in the #1 non-magnet school in the city? Why not? Why are we?
1 minute, Ms. Mahoney.
Why would we not do that? Thank you. Why not ensure that the highest performing students in the district continue to learn in the same environment through their preparation for high school? Expanding Wendell Cross would be putting my tax dollars to good use and creating much needed room for our city middle schools. I just have one last thought, if I may. Currently, my son is in 2nd grade at Wendell Cross. I myself was a student at Wendell Cross. We live in the neighborhood. Wendell Cross is our neighborhood school. My husband and I have made the decision that we will move our son to a private school if Wendell Cross is not a K through 8 by the time he is promoted from 5th grade. Even, judging from what I've read, that, wouldn't happen. But the cost of private school tuition is worth any financial sacrifices we're going to make as a family to ensure our child continues to receive a greater level of academic support in a more controlled, safe environment where he can continue to thrive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers who have signed up. Is there anyone else here who would like to address the board this evening? Please step forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Kendall. I live at 133 Eastside Boulevard, and I believe I did sign
I
up.
apologize. You did sign up.
That's all right. That's fine.
I thought I recognized that.
That's me. Basically, what I came to the board for today is for advocacy for Wendell Cross expanding into a pre-K through 8 school. I believe that the goal for Wtby needs to be an increased academic achievement and create atmospheres more conducive to learning. And I believe by getting away from the middle school, we will then be doing that. By having a more hands-on approach as well as a smaller schools, students will demonstrate fewer behavioral problems and be allowed to focus on higher academic achievement. In longitudinal studies from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Philadelphia, and several other studies, students enrolled in K through 8 schools had higher academic achievement by both boys and girls in comparison to K through 6 and middle school. By keeping students in a K through 8 setting, both faculty and staff have much better chances of truly knowing the workings of students and their families, which is a very important issue in Wtby. We want to make sure that our students are treated well. We want to be able to catch any kind of educational issues as well as social issues with them. For parents such as myself who have a child with a learning difference, we can feel comfortable knowing our child feels safe and their struggles and accomplishments not only are well documented, but have been witnessed firsthand. For many parents, we are faced with either moving once our child gets to 5th grade, putting our child into private schools, or sending him on to a middle school. And many parents are choosing to leave. This often causes a loss in the dollars and tax money because people do not want to move their families to our city because of the middle school issue. We need to make Waterbury family-friendly, and by doing this, we need to start having our schools go from a K through 5 to a K through 8. And middle schools will begin, by doing this, we will start the process of really, really nurturing our students. Thank you.
Thank you. So now that concludes the list of speakers who signed up. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board? Please step forward to the podium.
My first time coming.
Would you please state your name and address?
My name is Marcel Nicholas Sora. I live at 45 Cooper Drive. And I have two children that are enrolled, one in North End, and my other daughter is in Regan Elementary. I'm sorry for being so informal. I don't have anything prepared. I just want to address an issue that I've had in the past couple of years involving my kids. There have been 3 incidences of bullying, and there's one that occurred just most recently in the past couple days where my child was assaulted by 2 girls in the school bus. The punishment to me was very minimal, and given the severity of what I feel as a concerned parent, having to hear my daughter call me and saying what happened to her, it just tore me up inside. And I don't know if this is the correct form to bring this up in terms of if there is, what I'm trying to find out is it discretionary for certain punishments for certain types of assaults in the school bus? And I think the child that assaulted my child only got she was only banned from the school bus for 5 days. But there was 2 girls that jumped her because they were trying to steal her book. But I think the best testimony I could probably provide to you is my daughter. So I brought her here, hoping that she could shed some light on what goes on in the Waterbury school buses. When the bus driver couldn't see anybody, and there was no one on the bus to see how the kids are behaving in the back. And I asked to see a copy of the videotape, and I was denied this privilege. And I need to know why.
Sir, what we'd love to do, and I don't want to cut public comment, but I'd love to have a conversation with you. So if you want to conclude your remarks, we can take that on camera, and I can give you some advice. We have a parent liaison sitting right here that can assist you.
I'd be glad to, but does my daughter have any voice on this forum?
I would just
or is it something that has to be put aside?
No, we can talk about that, but I'd like to talk with you first, and then we can certainly get your daughter's remarks later.
Okay.
I would not recommend putting a child on camera.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see this.
This is being televised.
I didn't know this being taped.
It's live.
My apologies.
It's live,
Okay.
so I would not recommend that.
Sure, absolutely.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our speakers for this evening. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to return to the regular order of business.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're to the point of the superintendent's announcements. I will move on to the next one until she gets back. President's comments, and then the superintendent will give hers. There will be no school on Monday, October 12th, in observance of Columbus Day. And Columbus Day is a national holiday observed on the second Monday of October. Columbus was born in Genoa, Italy, and the holiday has also become noted as an Italian heritage celebration. Of note this week, the board and other officials were invited to meet with the State Teacher of the Year Selection Committee at Kennedy High School. In all, there were about 16 members of the committee from the state visiting Kennedy to get feedback and input on our District Teacher of the Year, Johanna Hayes, who is one of the 4 finalists for that honor. As part of the process, the mayor and the board members met with CABE officials charged with the task of getting input and give and take with the board and the mayor. For me, it was very interesting to see how very involved the process is for the selection and how it plays out. This is all very serious business and not to be taken lightly. Certainly the mayor and the board were very high on Mrs. Hayes and all conveyed that message in force to the committee. Later that day, the committee went on to meet and visit with the other finalists for the Teacher of the Year from the state. And another piece of good news about Kennedy, the State of Connecticut Bond Commission approved $1.5 million for the installation of artificial turf at Kennedy. The field project is part of a much larger addition project at the school, which consists of new classrooms and an auxiliary gym. The Kennedy High School project also includes a realignment and remodeling of the office, central office, and the nurses' suite. And when completed, some sort of opening celebration will be held for all to come and see. And that concludes my comments this evening. Now we'll revert back to the superintendent's announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we might have stated this. I'm sorry I missed your remarks, but the Connecticut State Teacher of the Year Committee conducted a site visit. Did you already review that already?
I did, but I gave the aspect of the board and the mayor.
I just wanted to say how very proud we are of Johanna Hayes as one of the 4 finalists. She had a spectacular site visit, and we await arrival of the decision. So it's certainly a great honor for Mrs. Hayes, Kennedy High School in Waterbury. Just a couple of quick announcements. The annual Title I meeting will be held next Wednesday, October 7th, from 5:30 to 7 at Waterbury at its Magnet School cafeteria. Participants will receive a free book for their child along with information on Title I, school governance councils, school family community partnerships, and how to improve parent engagement. So we welcome all parents to attend that evening, and translations will be provided in Spanish and Albanian. Our schools are continually celebrating our Hispanic Heritage Month with a variety of activities. I believe that have been forwarded to you, and Commissioner Rodriguez has been sending those along as well, so I really appreciate that. Some of the examples we've had is Maloney School held a salsa night tonight, 5:30 to 6:30. Gil Martin had hosting a student poetry night on Thursday, October 15th from 5:30 to 7. And Kingsbury will be hosting a Hispanic potluck that evening on 5 to 7 p.m., and that's October 15th at Kingsbury Hispanic Potluck Supper, 5 to 7. And Wilson will have a student concert during school on that same day, so everything is happening on October 15th. Tuesday evening, I had the pleasure of attending an event at the Hispanic Culture Center. I had the opportunity to see the center for a couple of times I've been there. It's spectacular. I cannot believe the renovations. So if you have not been there, it's certainly a work of art, and so is the artwork in there a work of art. The cultural displays are spectaculars, and they have such great programs. So it was an exciting night the other night. The youth leadership programs are outstanding. And so I look forward to more work with them, but it was just an outstanding event the other night. The NIAC accreditations of Duggan and Gilmartin pre-kindergartens have been maintained following an annual review. And Carrington and Reed School are currently in the review process. And then Crosby High School is having a Crosby GROTC Culinary Arts Breakfast on Sunday, October 4th from 8 to 11 a.m. And that concludes my remarks this evening, Mr. President. I'll entertain any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Dr. Ouellette. Any questions for Dr. Ouellette at this point from the board? Okay, then. Moving on to item number 9 on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to remove an item from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, I will read the consent calendar. 9.1, Committee on Finance requests approval of Amendment 1 to the contract with College Board for college readiness programs. This is funded by the Alliance Grant. 9.2, Committee on Curriculum requests approval of the AVID elective, AVID secondary course. 9.3, Committee on Curriculum requests permission be granted to Rich Martinez of WAMS and 2 chaperones to take 30 students to New York on October 27th to attend the NACAC Performing and Visual Arts College Fair. 9.4, Committee on School Facilities and Grounds to request approval of a contract with Turco Golf Incorporated for Crosby High School athletic field improvements, and this is funded by the Capital Improvement Bond. 9.5 is the Committee on School Facilities and Grounds, would be the use of school facilities by school organizations and/or city departments. And 9.6 is the Committee on School Facilities and Grounds also, and it's the use of school facilities by outside organizations and/or waiver request.
Motion to approve the consent calendar is read, items 9.1 through 9.6.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item number 11, Committee on Finance. Commissioner Sweeney filling in for Commissioner Jason Van Stone.
Ladies and gentlemen, with the approval of the Committee on Finance, the Superintendent of Schools recommends approval of a new text school agreement with New Technology Network, LLC, for a school education program, NTHS model for Crosby High School, funded by Crosby's Turnaround Funds. Respectfully submitted and so moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on that item? Very well. Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on now to item number 12, Committee on Policy, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, with the approval of the Committee on Policy, the Superintendent of Schools recommends approval of the revised high school grading QPR policy, number 6146.1, as attached. Respectfully submitted and moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Brown.
Just briefly, the new policy addresses two areas. The high school grading, we're going from a numerical to an alphabet system with the same crossovers. And the second major thing is the weighting. Instead of a 4.0 scale, we're going to a 4.33. And the reason for this is to really incentivize people to take the honors courses and AP courses. This will not impact extracurricular eligibility or anything, but it really is to, if I take an AP course, we would like to make sure that kids are rewarded for doing that. Right now, there's little difference between an AP course and an honors course. So this is what the district is recommending, those two moves.
Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 13, Committee on School Personnel, Vice President Harvey, 13.1.
Thank you. Item 13.1, ladies and gentlemen, with the approval of the Committee on School Personnel, the Superintendent of Schools recommends approval of the lateral transfer request of Jennifer Dwyer from Supervising Vice Principal, Driggs School, to Supervising Vice Principal, Gilmartin School, effective immediately. Respectfully submitted and so moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next item is item number 14, Superintendent's notification to the board.
Motion to receive and place on file superintendent's notification to the board, items 14.1 through 14.6.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15.
Abstention.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Commissioner Tom Van Stone, one abstention. Okay, item number 15, unfinished business of the preceding meeting only. Seeing none. Item number 16, other unfinished, new, and miscellaneous business. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to give a Congratulations to Mrs. Marole. I attended the breakfast for the School Governance Council parents last Friday, as many did here, and really impressed with the wonderful attendance and the great work that Mrs. Marole is doing with our parents and the School Governance Councils. Many schools were recognized, and I really appreciate the fact that they were recognized, because this is a very important system that we've instituted in our school system, and they're doing great work. So thank you to Mrs. Marole and the schools, the teachers, and the parents who are really participating and making this really a great asset to our schools.
Thank you. Commissioner Hernandez?
I have a couple. I was approached by several parents asking if it was possible for a crossing guard and a crosswalk to be put on the corners of Oak, Wood, and Ash Street. There are at least 6 different bus stops that stop there. The last bus comes at 5:30 p.m. I myself witnessed several cars driving past the flashing lights. The kids have to cross. That's a busy intersection. I just think it would be in our best interest to try to keep these kids safe. At some point, someone's going to get hurt. There's really no one there to cross them once the bus decides to cut off its lights and the child hasn't gotten totally across the street yet. So I'm asking that someone please look into putting a crosswalk and a crossing guard on the corner of Wood, Oak, and Ash for the 6 different school buses that pick up children in that area. Secondly, on Tuesday, I had the pleasure of attending the open house or for the Hispanic Cultural Center. As the superintendent said, it was fabulous. The students there were very knowledgeable of their heritage. They were very excited to offer you any type of information you wanted. I actually ended up staying there past time. I actually closed the place. The food was great. The entertainment was great. The knowledge that the children shared with everyone. The building looks absolutely gorgeous. So if you get a chance, I would recommend that you go in and do a tour. Mariah down there at the center really does not mind giving anyone a tour. It was really great. I enjoyed myself. That's it. Thank you.
Vice President Harvey?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll echo that. It's really a great job that they've done in renovating Wtby, and I echo that sentiment. I want to go back to Johanna Hayes. I just want to, again, I know I've said this to her 1,000 times, but I just really keep my fingers crossed that she is selected as Teacher of the Year for the state. But I also wanted to just mention that the committee was very accommodating. I talked with them for at least 20 minutes. They had phone interviews set up. They just basically let me talk and didn't interrupt, and just were very gracious. I also want to mention that the board members who participated, I know I heard Kathy was there, Kathy Awad, Juanita Hernandez, the 2 Van Stones, Liz Brown, and if I left anyone else, in addition to the superintendent and the mayor. I think the committee went away with knowing that we really appreciate Johanna. So we just keep our fingers crossed and just hope that she gets it. She deserves it very much. I want to thank, let me put my glasses on so I can see the following people for coming out to the community by request of the NAACP to Mount Olive AME Zion Church, my church, to accommodate a discussion presentation on chronic absenteeism. Darren Schwartz, Paul White, Pamela Bain, Michelle Baker, Kevin Walston, Marianne Merrill. This was held on Tuesday from 6 to 8 at Mount Olive Amy Zion Church. It was a presentation, and this is basically what we look for, you know, and what they look for is to come out into the community. And there's a very lively discussion on chronic absenteeism. We need all hands on deck. And, you know, we need things coming out from the pulpit. You know, get the kids in school. The only way they're going to learn is if they're in school. So I think that message was given very, very clearly. I know that the group appreciated it, and we need to continue to get this message out to the community. So I want to thank them. I know there are a lot of other things that were discussed. There was the impact of teachers not looking, the role models, and, you know, some of the comments were, you know, some teachers don't look like the students, you know, so that could, you know, impact on learning, or the impact on whether or not the kids are in school. They're not excited about going to school, etc. But we need them in school in order to learn. So again, I want to just thank the group for doing that, and hope we can continue to do so. Lastly, you know, I wasn't, you know, going to say something about this because the gentleman, I didn't get his name, came up and spoke about bullying, but I have Dr. Willett, two complaints regarding bullying. I have to call the parents on this probably tomorrow. And within the past couple of weeks, I've heard more and more about bullying and the catch-22 that some kids are in. They complain about, go to their teachers or administrators and say, well, so-and-so is bullying me, so-and-so is threatened to harm me. They tell the teacher, they're afraid to go to school, they stay home from school, then they go back and they're threatened again, and then they get into a fight and they're arrested for fighting when they're being bullied. So I'm going to get the details on it, but I think we really, really need to look at our bullying procedures again, because it's these kids are caught in a catch-22. No, I'm not saying they should fight. I'm not saying that. But if they come to us and say, this person, or, you know, I'm afraid to go to school because this child has said they're going to harm me, then we really need to look into that to avoid the fight. And this is what I talk about when we talk about the arrests. We talk about, well, the police are doing what they should be doing. Yes, they are. But what are we doing in advance of or before our students get into a fight? What are we doing to prevent it? So I'm going to get the details, and I will call you on this. But I'm really concerned about this because it seems to be something that we're not taking care of. And we want the schools safe. We don't want the schools fighting, but we also want the kids to feel comfortable coming to school. So I think with that, I will end it with that. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we will not need an executive session this evening, so I will entertain a
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Okay.